Okay, so we're going to close out this chapter with our discussion of labor unions. All right. Um, all right. So the most sweeping piece of legislation as it relates to unions is the National Labor Relations Act. This act did a couple of things. It did establish the National Labor Relations Board, or the NLRB, um, which will actually oversee elections um, to certify a union when we get to that case. When we get to that point, I should say. Um, it prohibited unfair labor practices. So the idea is, and past experience has indicated that union represented employees earn higher salaries than non-union employees. So accordingly, businesses often have an interest in preventing the certification of a union. All right. And prior to this act, businesses would terminate employees who talked about certifying a union, or just not hiring employees who were members of a union. All right. Um, and so it basically required companies to deal with unionization, union leadership, and union members. And it established labor practices, or it established unfair labor practices that are illegal and result in large fines for employers. All right. It did require good faith bargaining, which is the collective bargaining process where um, company management, decision makers, persons with the authority to affect the change that the um, union leadership requests, sit down with union leadership and bargain, negotiate. Doesn't require that they're able to come to terms, but it does require the process take place. All right. So the steps to certify a union. All right, and so I've linked a video. It's a piece or a portion of the High Cost of a Low Price. It's a documentary that uh, explores, calls into question some of the business practices of Walmart. All right. Um, and so I've set the video up where it starts at a certain point, and I've instructed you to stop it at a certain point. Of course, you can watch more of it. It's a very good, informative documentary, but that part relates to union organization in a Loveland, Colorado Walmart, Tire and Lube Express subset of a Walmart store. All right. The process to certify a union. Well, it starts with authorization cards that employees sign. And if a majority of employees sign authorization cards, the best practice is for the employer to voluntarily recognize the union at that point. That's the most efficient practice. The employer doesn't have to, and if they refuse to, then we proceed to the next step, which is an election. All right, so election would be conducted, and usually this is ran by the National Labor Relations Board. All right, so they will conduct an election, And if the majority of employees elect for a union would be certified. From that point, the company management would have to collectively bargain with union leadership. All right. Also, in most industries, the union would have the legal authority to strike. Now, certain fields, you just can't strike, right? So that would include police, airplane pilots. They struck, and the president ordered them back to work several decades ago. So not every industry can strike, but your auto workers can strike. Your machinist can strike. Your electrical workers can strike. All right. Assuming it's done legally. So strikes cannot be violent. They cannot be sit-down strikes that take place in the workplace. But it is, you can strike once you've established the union. The lockout is the analog to the strike, and oftentimes employers may lock the employees out when they think that they're going to strike, or to encourage, because keep in mind it's a two-way street, and sometimes it's company management that is wanting the union to take some concession, right? So it's not always the union and union leadership asking for more money or better benefits. Sometimes it is company management saying, our revenues are down, the outlook is bleak, and we need to get employment costs down. All right, so it can happen that way as well. When that happens, a lockout is more likely to occur, and the lockout can continue until the parties come to terms. Right? The book references the Major League, I believe it was baseball and basketball lockout that happened in the same year. And you commonly hear it referred to in sporting terms, but it can happen really in any industry. All right, so that's a little bit about the union organization process.